My kingdom is not from this world. In the name of God, amen. How much do you know about game theory? Now, maybe like me, your knowledge has been confined to Russell Crowe's portrayal of mathematician John Nash, a Nobel laureate in economics, in the 2001 film, A Beautiful Mind, a sensitive depiction of a brilliant scholar's struggle with mental illness. The movie, A Beautiful Mind, leaves game theory largely in the background. Game theory, which Nash did much to formulate and to advance in the 1950s and 60s, isn't merely about chess or Monopoly. It's a highly evolved branch of mathematics which seeks to formulate, understand the strategic aspects of decision-making, or aspects controlled by the players rather than by pure chance. These situations transcend the games we play around the table after Thanksgiving dinner. Here's how the Encyclopedia Britannica describes game theory's influence. Quote, "It has been used, for example, to determine what political coalitions or business conglomerates are likely to form, the optimal price at which to sell products or services in the face of competition, the power of a voter or a block of voters, whom to select for a jury, the best site for a manufacturing plant, and the behavior of certain animals and plants in their struggle for survival." Game theory. It has even been used to challenge the legality of certain voting systems. And there are other kinds of games, too. James P. Carse, who died about 4 years ago, was a professor of literature and history. And when he thought about culture and art and faith, he identified finite and infinite games. Writing in about 1986, he proposed that finite games are activities such as politics, sports, business competitions, and wars, where there are rules and boundaries, and the ultimate announcing of a winner and a loser. The infinite game, by contrast, has no winner, no conclusion. Competitors may change or may not even exist or be visible to a player. An infinite game, as the name implies, doesn't really end. So to simplify all of this, hockey and bowling are finite games. Education and marriage, infinite games. Hockey and bowling are about winning and power and skill. Education and marriage are about growth. Or in Carse's own words, play and possibility. Finite games, of course, conclude with someone's defeat. In the infinite game, no one is ever defeated. Here's how Leonard Cohen put it in a song perhaps you love, like I do. Love is not a victory march. My kingdom is not from this world. Jesus tells Pilate in John's Gospel, if it were, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over. So are you a king? Asks a befuddled bureaucrat, Pilate. We know this scene so well from Good Friday. And perhaps there's nowhere else in the gospel where finite and infinite contrast so clearly. Order, dominance, suppression on the one hand, an opening kingdom of love, all-inclusive love on the other. It's an old story, and it's a new story. Today, the very last Sunday of the church year, is known across a number of Christian denominations as the Feast of Christ the King, or increasingly as the Reign of Christ. So what kind of a king is this? Soon to be crucified and ruthlessly exposed in the place that is called the skull. Is he a king who would today want, for example, America to reign as a Christian nation? Finite games, of course, conclude with someone's defeat. Infinite games never do. The writer Tim Alberta, in his conclusion to The Kingdom, the Power, and the Glory, American Evangelicals in an Age of Extremism, suggests that Christian nationalists have misread this gospel profoundly. In his diagnoses, they've confused, simply put, the finite and the infinite, exchanged love for the lure of dominance. It's an old and repeating American story, though. More interested perhaps in Christian votes than in Christian values. Characters such as Senator Joseph McCarthy believed that America was, quote, engaged in a final all-out battle between communistic atheism and Christianity. Finite, infinite. Christianity, Alberta's book suggests, works best as an organizing principle when there is a strong non-Christian force to organize against. To which Jesus says, "My kingdom is not from this world." For one thing, Jesus is a king with no interest in winning, if we understand winning in its usual finite, worldly sense. Not a higher power, some have suggested, but a higher vulnerability. A higher vulnerability. And the power of this king in this moment, and in all moments, is the power of a kind of love that refuses to bash back. He refrains from organizing against. This kingdom, the kingdom we proclaim this morning, is instead to be about something else. A volunteered vulnerability that jams the ancient human circuitry of bashing and bashing back. The old and perpetual swing between attack and retaliation, the assigning of winners and losers, the deserving poor and the undeserving poor. Paul, in his own meditation on the cross, saw it this way. God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring into being things that are. Things that are. Our foolish, weak, low, and despised King. The point, of course, is not shame, but the growth and new life that so often begins in that place of shame and woundedness. A higher vulnerability. This is the way Jesus sent out his very first saints, the apostles, into a big and hostile and frightening world. It's my favorite passage in Mark's gospel. Matthew and Luke retell it. Go, he tells them. I am sending you out like lambs among wolves. This is to be a campaign, a campaign. We who have just lived through an endless campaign. This is to be a campaign completely free of coercion. He will not organize against. It's reckless. It's trusting. It's outrageous. But it's a way of living that transforms both the self and those around the self. It's never to be about triumph if that triumph has victims. It's never to be a finite game. What jams Pilate's circuits, what seems like on this particular Friday morning in Jerusalem to be Jesus failing at his own defense, is a shocking step away from the need to control, to prevail, to dominate. Controlling, prevailing, and dominating have no home in a faith that follows the Jesus we meet this morning. Controlling, prevailing, and dominating have a home in hockey and bowling and golf. They do not have a home in education, in marriage, in our shared faith. Jesus is instead inviting us into an infinite game, otherwise known as eternal, loving relationship. The reign of Christ is not about some perceived us winning and another perceived them losing. The reign of Christ is instead about all people together. Those of us here this morning, those without church, those miles beyond these walls, those with whom we feel allied, and those from whom we feel estranged. Our faith is personal, of course. But this feast reminds us that our faith also has political implications insofar as its concern is wider human life together. Personal, political. What faith cannot be is partisan. The them Christ surveys and forgives from the cross are one, are all of us together. A mentor of mine, the late Sam Lloyd, was fond of a certain phrase. The love at the heart of the universe. The love at the heart of the universe. Good morning, Sam. How's that love doing at the heart of the universe? I would ask him on a particularly rough day. But this is the love Jesus unveils for us. This is the love he's pointing us into. Like gravity, it holds every single person impartially. Believers, non-believers, those you love, those who threaten you. It's this generosity, that gracious rule, that which we prayed at the beginning of this service, invites us to model. O awful love, we sang just moments ago, which found no room in life where sin denied thee, and doomed to death must bring to doom the powers, the finite powers, which crucified thee, till not a stone was left on stone, and all those nations, pride o'erthrown, went down to dust beside thee. New advent of the love of Christ, shall we again refuse thee, till in the night of hate and war we perish as we lose thee. Finite. From old unfaith, our souls release to seek the kingdom of thy peace, by which alone we choose thee infinitely. Loving God, when we focus too much on the finite and the victorious, help us to remember your promise of growth. When we have lost, renew in us the power of your love. Loving God, thy kingdom come. Amen.